Welcome to Done, Not Perfect, the podcast for ambitious but anxious creatives ready to overcome fear, perfectionism, and self-doubt to share their gifts and talents with the world. I'm your host, Aaron, here to help you tackle things such as overthinking, procrastination, and fear of rejection with practical tools and strategies to take action and find fulfillment. This is your space to let go and get going, because done is always better than perfect. Let's begin. Welcome to the Done, Not Perfect podcast. I am your host, Aaron, and I am trying my damnedest to control my emotions, to control my excitement for doing this. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you to you, the listener, especially if you're an OG listener of my podcast that has been rocking with me for almost a year now through the 2 iterations of the podcast, and now the third one, the rebrand, to complete. This is a new chapter for me. And if you're new, if this is the first time that you've ever listened to me, you've heard of me, I want to say thank you. And if you haven't done so yet, please follow the podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get podcasts. And this is going to be a very, very, very special podcast. I really believe this is going to help a lot of people, but mainly you specifically. This episode, I want to take some time and just really kind of reintroduce myself, because I know there's probably people that's listening to this podcast that have never heard me before. And even you that has been following me on social media for the last 4 to 5 years, and maybe you've been listening to the podcast for the last year. I want to reintroduce myself to you as well, because I want to explain kind of why I took a break from podcasting, why the names have changed now for the 3rd time. This is going to be the last time, I promise you. And the reason why I want to take this episode in particular, the very first one of this rebrand, is because it's kind of in alignment to what this podcast is about. This podcast, Done Not Perfect, is what the intro said. If you listen to the intro, it's for ambitious but anxious creatives. Those of you that you have a gift, you have a talent, and you know exactly what it is. Maybe you're a speaker, maybe you're an artist, maybe you're in music or in movies, maybe you're an entrepreneur, you're a dreamer, maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're an executive, maybe you're an assistant, and you're hesitant to show your work. You're hesitant to put yourself out there because maybe you're an overthinker, or maybe you're a procrastinator, or maybe you have a fear of rejection. I don't know what it is, but we're going to tackle all of it. But I want to take some time because I want to kind of show you why I believe I deserve your attention, and what experiences and expertise I have in these categories to be able to have the authority to help you if you're willing to lend me your ears. And I also know that I'm not going to be for everyone. I know that, this podcast is not going to be for everyone, but this podcast could be for you. And I want to start by kind of explaining why the podcast has changed and where it is today. Then I'm going to go into what my intentions for this podcast is moving forward. And then finally, I'm going to talk about overthinking, and I'm going to briefly touch on overthinking, which is going to be part 1. The next episode is going to be a full episode on overthinking, which is going to be overthinking part 2. But I want to be able to connect with you in a way where there's some trust here. And I don't just want to go into a podcast of telling you things. I want you to get to know me more and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So with that being said, let's get into it. For those of you that have listened to my podcast over the last year, the original name of the podcast was called the Third Quarter Podcast. And the reason why it was called the Third Quarter was because it was in reference to my basketball background. There's 4 quarters in basketball. And the third quarter usually was the quarter where it was going to determine who was going to win and who was going to lose based on how you were going to come out after halftime. And halftime was the time where you took your rest, you took your break, you reevaluated, you re-strategized, and then you went out there and performed. And so my thinking back then was, oh, okay, third quarter of life, third quarter. And I was like, oh, I'm going to call it the Third Quarter Podcast. And it was great. And I loved it. But there was a point in time where I started to feel a little disconnected. And I started to feel like I was coming up with episodes to fit the title. And then I wasn't feeling really connected and I wasn't having as much fun. And then I was like, you know what? I think I need a name change. And so I changed it to New Normal, the New Normal Show. And that was in reference to my fitness company that I've had, New Normal Fitness, and creating a new normal for yourself, new normal. And I was like, man, like this is good, but it's still not it. And so I decided that I needed to take a complete break. So my last episode of the New Normal Show was, I think, a week before Thanksgiving. It was in November of 2024. And now we're in January. And I took some time to really get an understanding of, where do I feel most equipped to help people? And if you follow me on social media, there have been moments and times where I talked a lot about my love for film, my love for sports, obviously, my love for professional wrestling, my love for television, my love for the creative arts. I did plays growing up. My brother was an actor. God rest his soul. I had 2 other brothers who were actors. I come from a family that just loves movies, and movies and film and entertainment has been a huge part of my life. Pop culture has been a huge part of my life, but I couldn't figure out how to talk about that with the kind of presence that I had on social media that was talking about personal development and my faith and God and things like that. It just didn't really make sense. And during this hiatus that I took, I started asking myself, I was like, man, like, I feel like I'm supposed to weave all this stuff together, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. And then I remember just, talking out loud and thinking to myself, like, okay, let's do this. Let's work backwards from here. Let's look at my fitness background. Let's look at my fitness business. What kind of people did I help? Well, I was helping people usually over the age of 35, 40 and above. There were some people that were younger than me, but mainly they were 40 and above, and they were, in the arts. They were they were either actors, they were celebrities, they were entrepreneurs, they were people that were, independent thinkers and independent contractors, and they kind of put their destiny in their own hands. So, okay, that's cool. Then I started asking myself, well, what about my friends? What do my friends do? And well, most of my friends are in entertainment in some type of way. They're directors, they're cinematographers, they're actors, they're producers, they're writers, they're in music. And I was like, okay, well, that's cool. And I was like, what about me? I was like, well, I played basketball and I love film and I love all this stuff. And I was like, okay, well, what kind of problems did my clients have outside of fitness? Well, there was always issues of limiting beliefs. There was issues of, can I start this business? There was issues with, procrastination and overthinking. And I've reached this level of success. Can I go further? Or I've reached levels of success in this field. Can I do it in this field? Or there's this thing that I want to do, but I'm a little hesitant to do it. And people see me in this light and what they're going to think. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I've dealt with that, with my life too. And I was like, oh, maybe this is how I merge everything together. Maybe instead of trying to do one thing or the other, maybe it's both and. And so I was like, well, maybe my love for personal development and coaching and speaking and helping take complicated and complex information and make it simple and digestible to be, listened to, understood, and applied. maybe I take that and I speak to the people that are in those kind of fields of entertainment, of artistry, of creatives, of entrepreneurship, of dreamers, and do it that way. And so I was like, okay, well, I think I'm kind of narrowing my audience here. Now the next thing is, okay, well, what do I call this thing? And I had all these other ideas and then I was like, something in my mind was like, what have I struggled with the most? Because I'm a big believer of you are always the most equipped to help the person that you once were. And I always was someone that would hesitate with putting myself out there because things weren't perfect. And I would research more. I would edit more. I would like, I don't like this angle. I got to change my angles. And I was like, perfectionism and image was always at the forefront of my mind. And I was like, it wasn't until I said, you know what, I'm done with trying to be perfect. I'm just going to put it out there. And then it hit me, done, not perfect. That's the name of the podcast. And so now we've evolved into this space where I want to help ambitious and anxious creatives. And when I say anxious, I mean, you're worried, you're concerned, you're hesitant to put your work out there because of how it's going to be seen, or maybe you don't think it's good enough, or you're comparing yourself to other people, or whatever the case is, you're anxious about putting yourself out there. I struggled with anxiety my whole life, so I understand firsthand what it's like to be a quote unquote anxious creative. And so I really want to serve. And if this is you, you've come to the right place. This is the place where you can be seen, you can be heard, you can be understood, but also you can grow. You can be nurtured here in this environment of anxious creatives who are ambitious, who want to share their gifts and talents with the world. But there's a disconnect between starting and putting it out there, right? Like you can start it, but there's more work to be done. You're trying to make it perfect, or you're overthinking the process, or whatever it is that you're doing. And it's preventing you from putting yourself out there. So that's what this podcast is for. And this is who it's for. And moving forward, what I really want this podcast to do is I want you to know that I am a man of service. And you guys know, for those of you that know, some of you that don't know, I am a man of faith. Okay. I am a God-fearing man. I am a Jesus follower. I am a Christian. That is who I am. And that will never change. Now, this podcast is not only for people that are Christian and that believe in God or whatever. However, a part of what I'm going to be talking about is going to be stating the fact that a lot of my breakthrough and my creativity and putting myself out there comes from the space of me getting out of the way and letting God work through me. And I truly believe that we are made in the image and likeness of God, the ultimate creator. And so if I'm going to believe that I am made in the creator's image, and I'm also made in his likeness, then that I also have to believe that it is in my DNA to create. And the reason why that's important is I started to slowly grasp that creating is not something that I do, it's who I am. And when you look at what separates us from animals and plants and any other living organism that God has created, we are the only ones that have the ability to create, like the ability to make stuff. Like God made everything from nothing, right? Like the source of God created everything from nothing. And as the resource of that, I believe it's our responsibility to take what God made from nothing and take those things that he made and make something that hasn't been done before, or make it better, or make it different, or enhance it in some type of a way. And So, because I believe that a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is understanding that creativity is a spiritual asset. Okay. One of the reasons why I believe I struggled with my voice was because I was trying to figure it out. And maybe you're in a place right now with your art or your creativity, your business, where you're trying to figure it out. You got the business plan down, you got your schedule down, you got all these things that your mind can conceive. But the one thing that you might be missing is your creative, artistic ways are not your own. You didn't come up with this on your own. This was put in you before you actually were fully formed. So your ability to create whatever it is that you do naturally well with your talents and your gifts, that was given to you by God. And the moment that you grasp that, just like I did, it really starts to free things up, because you start to understand that you're not doing things of service. You are someone of service. And when you remove yourself from the equation, that it's not my responsibility to make people like what I do. It's my responsibility just to do what I do because that's who I am. And whomever my art is for, that's who it's for. And so when you realize that you are made in the image of God, thus it is your DNA to create, it kind of takes the pressure off of trying to be perfect, because you know that if he gave me the thing that I do extremely well and what I enjoy doing, that also means that he has an audience already set for me to enjoy my art. So to go deeper with it, it's kind of our moral obligation to put our art out there. But the problem is we tend to overthink things because we're taught to do things for a result. And what I mean by that is when you're in school, everything you do is to get a specific result, right? I'm studying to get a good grade. I'm getting a good SAT score. I got to take this test to get to a good college. I want to get all, it's you do this. It's a means to an end. But when it comes to creativity and allowing your spiritual gift to work through you, there is no end. And I think when we try to take a spiritual thing and conceptualize it as if it's a human thing, we tend to limit our capabilities. We put a cap on our gifting because we're trying to think it through. It has to make sense in our mind. But your creative ability goes beyond your level of thinking. This is why you can just turn on some music and start singing without even thinking what the lyrics are, or how you can just open up a notebook and start writing and not really know what you're going to write about, but the story just comes out. Or how I can just turn the microphone on with no script and just speak from the hip, because this is my natural spiritual gift. It just flows out of me. And the central theme of what I want this podcast to do for you is to help you get out of your own way, so your creative flow just comes out of you without you having to try. And a part of that is understanding the concept that your talent and ability and your creativity is not for you. And when you realize it's not for you, it's for the service of whomever your community or your tribe is, it will slowly but surely become easier for you to do that. And a part of this podcast is not just me telling you that, it's also me giving you practical steps on how to do that. And so now that you kind of know where this podcast was, where it is, and where it's headed, one of the most important things that we're probably going to be talking about on this episode, the next episode, and is probably going to be, woven through future episodes, is overthinking. because the worst place you can be as an artist, as a creative, as a dreamer, as an entrepreneur is in your head. I just had a conversation with my nephew a couple days ago. He's a senior in high school, and he plays basketball. And we were talking about his season, how things are going, and all this stuff. And we kind of got to this point where, we were talking about the mindset, and we were talking about what separates great players or great people from people that are just good or average or mediocre. And one of the things that I said was the elite of the elite get out of their head and they're into their body. And what I was getting across to him was, if you want to play at an elite level, if you want to play at a level that goes beyond your capability of what you can conceive is possible, you have to get to a place where you're no longer thinking about the game, you're reacting. Like, you're in such a flow that you're no longer playing the game, you are the game. And the biggest threat to creativity is thinking. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, like, Ace, this doesn't make any sense. Of course, I got to use my brain. I got to think. Now, I'm not saying be dumb. I'm not saying be stupid and be reckless. What I am saying is, when you understand now that your talent is not in the mind, it's in your spirit, your brain can't conceive fully what your capabilities are. And so when you're constantly thinking about what the next move is, what the next thing is, the next, you're limiting your creativity, because you're what you're telling yourself is that your creativity is in your brain. No, that's where your brain is. Your brain is in your brain. Your creativity is in your spirit, right? So you want to get out of your head and into your body. And the way that you do that is the moment that you are entering in your field of your art, right? So let's say, for an example, use my nephew. The way that you start to get out of your head and into your body is repetition. You have to continually use your gift and use your talent as often as humanly possible. And the reason is because it's like a muscle. The more that you use it, the more it grows. And the more it grows, the stronger it gets. And the stronger it gets, the more resilient it gets, this, that, and the third. But also, when you build muscle, you also burn fat. So the thing that is the most detrimental to your growth automatically decreases when you start strengthening yourself. So the moment that you start strengthening your talent, the moment that you start strengthening your gift, and you're doing it every single day, day in and day out, as often as you possibly can, you are strengthening the thing that you do well, but simultaneously decreasing the things that can get in the way, like overthinking, like procrastination, like limiting beliefs, right? So if you want to get rid of overthinking, the first thing you have to do is you have to prioritize repetition, right? And we're going to go more into this in the next episode, so you definitely don't want to miss that. And if you haven't followed or subscribed to the podcast yet, please do so, because you don't want to miss out on this next episode, okay? But I don't want to give you an entire episode of giving you the backstory and where we're going in the podcast, which is really more so about me than it is about you, without me giving you something in return, right? So I want to express my gratitude for you being here. And I want to leave you with this. If you want to stop overthinking, the first thing you have to do, in my opinion, is you have to prioritize repetition. You know in your heart what it is that you do well. You know the gift and talent that God has placed on your life. You know what it is. The problem is you're not using it enough. You're not putting yourself out there enough. When I in 2020, July 2nd, 2020, I posted my first TikTok video. All right. So this is like early COVID. My fitness business has consolidated and it's all virtual now. I'm in my apartment. I live by myself. I probably have, I don't know, 3,000 followers on Instagram. I don't even know what the hell a TikTok is. And I remember being so frustrated at that time because, early COVID, like we had no idea what the hell was going to happen. We didn't know we was going to die. We didn't know if the world was going to end. Like we did not know. Right. And it's crazy that it's almost 5 years since it like really started. Like we went into a lockdown almost 5 years ago. It's crazy. And I just remember being frustrated because I felt like there was something that I was supposed to be expressing creatively, but I couldn't figure out what it was. And I remember July 2nd, 2020, I heard God tell me, I want you to put out a prayer on TikTok. And I was like, what? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, what do you mean put a prayer out on TikTok? Like, this don't make no sense, right? Like, what do you mean put a prayer out on TikTok? Like, what is TikTok? Who on that? And why am I praying for people on here? And I'm going back and forth in my apartment. Like, do I do this? This is stupid. Now, mind you, the only content that I posted on Instagram was fitness stuff and just random stuff. And here I am putting a prayer out on TikTok, right? So I put a prayer out on TikTok and I don't think anything of it. And about a day or two later, I look at the video and it has like 3,000 views. Now, at that time, 3,000 views for me was like 1 million views in real life, right? And I'm like, 3,000 views? That's crazy. Got a couple of followers. I'm like, what? So I did another one. And I didn't have a ring light at that time. I didn't have a stand. I didn't have a tripod. I had no backdrop. I had nothing, right? And this is like early COVID when you got no haircut. And I'm looking terrible. Okay. I'm looking gross. And I'm posting content at terrible angles with, no idea of how to record video. I'm not looking at the camera. I'm looking at myself in the video. And for those of you that know, that's a no-no. Like you got to look at the light and look at the camera, not at yourself. Because when you look at yourself to the person that's consuming your content, it looks like you're looking down their shirt. Okay. So that's not what that is about. Don't want that. And so anyway, I'm recording one video a day. Then it's 2 videos a day. Then it's 3 videos a day. And about a month later, I do this prayer about anxiety. And I remember I was getting out of my car. It's like, 6:30 at night. And I literally felt this pull to go back into my car and do a prayer on anxiety. Now, at the time, I was 2-phone Tony. Okay. I had a personal phone and I had a business phone. I would record my videos on my business phone and I would use the flashlight on my personal phone as like a ring light. So I'm holding 2 phones in the car and I do this video on anxiety, right? Posted it, not thinking anything of it. About an hour later, my phone is blowing up because back then I had the notifications on because I needed my ego filled. All right. And that's going to be another episode we're going to talk about. Drop your damn ego. So the light's going off. And I look at my phone and in about 1 hour, my video does 50,000 views in an hour. Now, I never had a video that did that, period. In 1 hour, it's at 50,000 views, right? 30 minutes later, it's at 100,000. End of the night, it's like 500,000. I think that video has done 5 million views or something since then. But after that day, I was getting 12 to 1,500 new followers a day. And this came from me just sitting in my car or in my living room posting content. And I was doing it consistently every single day. And then my followers went up. But here's the thing. The problem was I didn't know what I was doing. And so my intention was not to grow on social media because I didn't know what TikTok was. But what happened, because I was doing it every single day, I started to strengthen my gift and my talent of communication. right? I was working it like a muscle because God knew where I was going. I did not know. I didn't know I was going to be doing a podcast about this. I didn't know that I was going to be speaking on stages. I didn't know I was going to be preaching at my church. I didn't know I was going to be flown in to give sermons at churches and to speak on stages in front of thousands of people. I didn't see that. He did. But I really believe in my heart that the reason why he led me to TikTok and not Instagram is because I was able to start from scratch. I was able to start from scratch on a platform in a place that no one has ever heard of me. And I can work on my gift every single day to make it a muscle so I can get stronger and trim the fat. And that's what I want you to do. That's what I want this podcast to be about. You come here to strengthen your muscle of your gift and your talent, your creativity, build as much muscle as possible so you can trim the fat of insecurity, of anxiety, of overthinking, of self-doubt, of limiting beliefs, of procrastination, so you can sculpt your creativity into this perfect sculpture of your destiny. Now, I know this is called done, not perfect, so you're never going to be perfect, but damn, you're going to be a lot better than what you've been because you finally allowed yourself to get out of the way to get on your way. So if any of this has connected with you, if any of this has resonated with you, I am so grateful and excited because I really do believe you are going to be on a train to your destiny because here, this is a space where you can learn, where you can grow, where you can be seen, but also be challenged a little bit. This ain't going to be, everything's okay. Like, no, I'm going to be calling you out. I'm going to be calling me out. I'm going to be sharing, personal stories and experiences of me, other people that I know. I'm going to be having guests on in the future. Like, this is going to be a place for ambitious but anxious creatives who are ready to get out of their way and on their way. And if that is you, and if you haven't followed or subscribed yet, what is you doing? All right, because there's no time like now. But with that being said, I am so grateful for your time and I don't want to take any more of it, especially because part 2 of Overthinking is coming out after this. So for all of you that are OG followers of mine, I want to say thank you for following me on the journey. Now, if you also paid attention to Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcast, I never deleted any of my episodes. So all of the episodes from the third quarter to the New Normal show, they are all there and they're going to stay there. And the reason is because I wanted to get rid of the episodes and start over from scratch, right? But then I thought about myself, that's not true, done, not perfect. I want you to see the progression. I want you to see the evolution. I want you to see that, hey, this is how it started. Like, it started here March of 2024, but look where we are now. I found my voice. I found my lane. I found my people. I found what I'm really passionate about talking. But look how it started. It started 50 plus episodes ago, not knowing where this was going. So for me to discontinue all those episodes to start brand new, to me, would not be true and genuine to what this podcast is about. So I love you so much, all my OG people. Thank you for following me and staying with me through all the changes and evolutions. And if this is your first time listening, welcome. I'm grateful that you're here. Please hit that follow and subscribe button and be notified whenever we drop a new episode. But listen, I love you so much. Be safe, be blessed. And thank you for listening to Done, Not Perfect.